Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mic'd Avengers podcast, where we focus on martial arts and action cinema, but definitely delve into much more. My name is Jason from Martial Arts Theater 3000. I've been a lifelong fan of martial arts movies from Bruce Lee to the Venom Mob, Bruceploitation, and everything in between.
My name's Dragon, aka the Fanatical Dragon on YouTube. I also write the Blu-ray reviews for Eastern Heroes magazine right here in the UK. I'm about 4 decades into this love affair with East Asian cinema, specifically action cinema. Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan and the Shaw brothers got me into Hong Kong films, but unlike my buddy Jason, I've seen a whole bunch of Japanese, Indonesian and South Korean action flicks too. So over the coming episodes, every so often, we're going to force feed him something he has not seen.
And I'm Shaun, also known as Food for Thought. It all started for me at the tender age of 14, where I discovered Jackie Chan's Drunken Master. From there, I kind of delved into old school Kung Fu, and that has been my passion for 30 plus years now. I also started delving into all realms of Asian cinema, and I'm very happy to say that these days I have a pretty strong passion for kind of dark Korean thrillers. If you like what you hear and you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a like, share, and subscribe. And please enjoy this episode of the Mic'd Avengers. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mic'd Avengers podcast, episode number 2. We're back, baby. And I'd like to first thank everyone that listened or watched episode 1. We got pretty good feedback about that one, so we decided to move on with episode 2. Always a good thing. So I'm back with Jason, back with Dragon, and this episode, we're going to dive into another Shaw Brothers classic, and we are going to discuss 1976, The Magic Blade. Jason, you hadn't seen this one.
No, I hadn't. Yeah, I was waiting for Shawscope 3, and it's been delayed from Amazon. And I had like a bad rip of this I was going to watch, but I went onto YouTube, and they had an HD version. I'm happy I did that. And I hadn't seen it before. My initial thought, we'll get into it, is that it doesn't feel like 1976 to me. It has more of an early 80s, like closer to Human Lantern. So it has to be ahead of its time in that regard.
I agree. It's quite funny. I've seen this film before. I did not know that I had, which is really strange. I basically review every film I watch in Letterboxd, and I went into Letterboxd, and there was a rating there for this film, and I was like,
"Oh wow,
I don't remember this." And then I had a full review on it, and I was like, "I don't remember any of this." And when I was re-watching the film, I didn't remember a thing. So somehow along the way, I pushed this one out of my brain entirely for some reason. I don't know why. But watching it again. We'll get into it, but it was a very unique experience, a very fresh experience for me. And Dragon, you had watched this one before.
I had, not for a little while, and I hadn't seen it looking as amazingly good as it does on Arrow's new restoration. I went back and checked my old IVL The Celestial DVD, which was supposedly remastered, but it's like night and day between the two. The Celestial one's super squished, and everything that Arrow did looks absolutely glorious. I absolutely fucking love this movie. I think it's absolutely incredible for so many reasons, which we will get into, but so stoked that you guys, Shaw, that you got to revisit it, and particularly intrigued to hear how Jason got on with it, seeing it for the first time, because it's a pretty wild ride, right?
Well, I think it's only right that we go to Jason first and have him give his first impression opinions on this one.
Absolutely.
So Jason, take it away. Cool. What do you think of? I suppose I should tell everyone, by the way, we're discussing The Magic Blade. It's a Cho Yuen film, just to let everyone know, and it stars T Lung, Lo Lei, and honestly, this is a nice little tidbit of kind of kung fu cinema knowledge. This might be the film that has the most recognizable faces in it.
Oh my gosh.
Every other film. I'm talking about background actors as well.
Oh, no, I know.
The list is the people that are in this film is insane. It's crazy.
I like to talk about. I'll get into my opinion, but I like to talk about like bridges in Shaw Brothers and different aspects of kung fu movies. This seems like a nice point where you have the early 70s guys and you could see the later 70s come in. And then, of course, Ku Feng, he's omnipresent. He, like Bolo Young, he just shows up everywhere.
He does. Yep, he's in everything.
But I'll give my take. So I initially watching it, this is going to sound funny, but because I always talk about Chang Che and Lau Kar Lung, Chor Yun, for some reason, for a while before I start watching more various different Shaw Brothers directors, I thought that was the Chinese name of Corey Yun, like a while back, years back.
Oh, okay.
When I would see it, I was like, oh, I guess like he chose Corey Yun and then his real name's Chor Yun. But then there was a time I was like, wait, I'm looking at this list. I don't see No Retreat, No Surrender. I don't see Ninja and the Dragon's Den. You know what I mean? So then obviously as the years went on, I'm like, okay, I want to look into this guy, but this is almost one of my first proper looks. I have to look at his filmography. The things that stick out to me are, I love how everything's dark, a lot of outside shots. That's the first thing I noticed. And I got some horror leanings, not as blatant as Human Lanterns, but the way they make T Lung walk, I was like, well, actually it's before Michael Myers, but it's so it's like an ominous figure walking in. So I was like, is this another Human Lanterns vibe? As it started, the music, the wind blowing. And now this makes me want to ask you, Dragon, it wouldn't be the Arrow restoration, no way, on YouTube. That's just probably the old Celestial, because it has the Celestial intro, which they have on the Arrow, but it wouldn't be the Shawscope 3 on YouTube to rent, right?
I wouldn't have thought so, because that's a new restoration, but completely new one by Arrow from the original Neg.
So I think I got that squished one a bit, but like watching it, I'll jump to it. Overall, I thought it was really good. I watched it twice. The second time is so much better. This is a very dense. There was a lot of errors in my subtitles. I'm sure they're fixed in Shawscope 2, but my subtitles had so many typos. Lots of like when it's supposed to say, "Look at that man," it would say, "Look at that men." It had a lot of like small little errors. So. This is a type of movie you get to the end and it makes it all make sense. The meanings interjected and everything. But as it goes along, I saw the differences in his directing. I felt like he was very brisk. He would jump scene to scene and it kept it moving along, but sometimes it wouldn't dwell too long. The fights were short and the exposition you would see in Chang-Chi movies were like the Spearman of Death or, the Spearman, Flag of Iron. They talk forever for like 20 minutes. These guys' backstories left and right. And it gets a little slow in the beginning. I love that movie. This, you're just going to see the two people. You're going to learn about them. And it's going to all unfold. And at the end, it makes it all make sense. The philosophy of the movie, I thought it was great. I thought it was really good. But I must say, it lost me at certain parts, like the chess scene and stuff. That didn't really do it for me. But it made up when it got. Okay. Yeah.
Which chess scene? Because there's a few. Because chess is a sort of recurring motif, right? Because I think maybe we should set the scene a tiny little bit for. I hope everybody who's listening to this has definitely seen it. Yeah. But essentially, we kind of start with Lo Lei meeting Te Lung, and you find that they've dueled a year previous. T Lung's bested Lo Lei, and they're basically having a rematch where last time it was to find out who's the best swordsman. This time around, only one person's going to survive, right? Yeah. And right in the middle of them about to kind of start to have their battle, some assassins show up trying to kill Lo Lei, and T Lung basically then segues into becoming Lo Lei's protector, weirdly. So we're saying, like, no one else can kill you. I'm going to be the one that kills you. That's like, great. That's just something that I'm going to do. So he then, ultimately, the two of them kind of have this sort of very reluctant alliance of sorts, where they're not going to fight until they get to the bottom of who's sending these assassins. Turns out to be a very secret mystical master called Master Yu, who seems to have a whole bunch of different assassins, very colorful, amazing group of assassins that he's going to send out. And then the bulk of the film is them really being drawn ever closer to the temple where Master Yu is supposedly staying, with a mind to stopping him from getting a mighty, maybe MacGuffin-esque weapon called the Peacock Fan, which has the power to take over the entire martial world. So try and stop him in his tracks, stop Master Yu, and then finally, eventually, T Lung can kill Lo Lei's character, right? And then there's a lot more that we'll get into, but that's the basic setup. But when you mention chess match, there's a few different chess beats, and then there's this. For me, the first sort of chess sequence is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a Shaw's movies. When they arrive at the little village and everybody's fucking dead, but it's been set up like puppets. Right?
Talk about horror. That is very taken from a horror film. It's very if I can reference gonna reference a modern version of what might be a classic, but House of Wax, for example. I've never seen the original, but I've seen the Paris Hilton. The classic Paris Hilton remake. But yeah, it's very House of Wax-ish. It's very just spooky, eerie, and I absolutely love that. Like Jason said, a lot of horror elements in this one, as well as, I admit I haven't seen many spaghetti westerns, but T Lung's character in this with the poncho and the kind of lone gunman, quote unquote,
100%,
very very western like. But yeah, it's kind of like a mishmash of genres at times, and I love that. But I agree with you, that sequence with the everyone's dead in the restaurant, fantastic.
Yeah, that I love that one. That was great. It was when they got to the chess match with all of them fighting
with Norman Chu.
Yes. It was okay. I think it was so dark. I think, like you said, the squished and the version I had, it just didn't look. I'm sure the Arrow version will be better.
Oh, it looked glorious on the Arrow.
Okay, yeah, mine. It's like, oh wow, do they have enough lighting? It looked very dark, and then that scene. But then once it got to the forest scene where you see those famous pictures of T Lung, those classics, I have to say he is such a badass in this. He couldn't be any colder. And and when you talk about like transitions, you have the baby face T Lung with David Chang in the early 70s, like Vengeance in that period. And then this is his middle period where, we talked about his 5 o'clock shadow and he looks so cool with the poncho. And then later, like a ninja in the Deadly Trap and beyond, he becomes this very majestic. He's like the elder statesman, you know? But in this, it's just such a nice middle period for him. He's so great. And there's just a couple scenes that lost me a little bit. And then, and something funny at the beginning was when you're young and you'll do like Kung Fu movies with your friends with like a whatever VHS.
Of course.
When he says to Lole, I can't remember why I wanted to kill you.
I wrote that down. I love that. I love
that. Is such a line when you're 8 years old, when you were imitating a Kung Fu movie. That's what you would say off the top of your head because you didn't know why you want to kill your buddy.
Yeah.
But so a couple of those moments lost me a little bit, but that's just par for the course. It made up for it by the end, and I'm excited to talk about the larger message and a couple strange things. I thought when Lole split, that was so, I had to watch it twice and rewind, like, where the hell did he go? It was so quick that I was like, where did Lole go?
He disappears very quickly.
And it's really more just spoken about than seen, right? We don't really kind of see him disappear. He's just going off to a different place. Then he gets a message back that he's died, which is, I think if you've seen enough of these movies, you kind of know, okay, he's not dead, right? And so some spoilers, he's going to come back at some sort of stage. But yeah, I think that was a kind of slightly weird story beat. We should maybe say at this point, this is one of the first, if not the first, I'll have to double check, adaptation of a Gu Long novel into a screenplay. And Chow Yun would kind of make a little bit of a part of a kind of career trajectory out of doing this. I think he made 22 adaptations of Gu Long short stories or novels, and he was a much more contemporary figure than the guy who wrote like Eagle Shooting Heroes, the kind of the other big sort of mainstay that they kind of drew on an awful lot for Shaw Brothers movies. So I think he was a contemporary of the people who were around at that time. So Gu Long, the writer, was kind of on the periphery circle, and there's a great kind of article in that Shawscope 3 book that Jonathan Clements writes specifically about Gu Long and how fucking mental his life was, and particularly how he stopped writing. Sean, I don't know if you had a chance to check that out yet.
I have not yet.
That's wild, of him getting basically attacked in a party, and a guy cuts through his wrist.
Oof.
And he kind of almost dies, and they end up managing to save his hand, but he can never write again. So all the scripts he did after that, he had to like dictate to get somebody else to write, and apparently like it lost a lot of his nuance and stuff. But yeah, he and Chow Yun specifically had this incredible sort of run of working on projects together, and that Shawscope 3 set really highlights some of the better collaborations between the two. That there's so many Chow Yun movies on that set, and we get 5 on the box set this time round, which is a very wonderful thing. And some of the ones they picked are really very magnificent. But yeah, this one was quite early on in their sort of their trajectory of collaborations together, and it's just a really crazy, twisty, mental mashup of a movie that moves at such a brisk pace, right? That there's a speed to it, even though it's quite long, because they say it's an hour and 50, I think. But it doesn't feel...
Hour 37 on my one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It moves along at an incredibly kind of brisk pace, particularly kind of not just with the fight scenes, but even like Jason said with the exposition, where it's not a very word heavy or dialogue heavy movie, even though people are speaking to each other, but it's just sort of great setup after great setup in an almost like very theatrical, almost kabuki theater type way, where you almost see the stagehands, right? You notice that in the first scene where when Lole arrives at the town, he's got a whole squad of people with him who set up this basically set around him, right? So they set up the table and set up the carpets and stuff for his dancers to come out and set up food and drink. And you kind of find out why he's decided to do that. But they kind of replicate that all the way through, where you're almost sort of seeing a little bit under the hood, where you're seeing each set actually kind of semi getting constructed around the events that are going to unfold with it, which I thought was very, very cool and something you don't often see.
It's funny that we say that this film is not very wordy. Well, firstly, for a Choi Yun film, it's actually very it's non-complex, because Choi Yun is very well known for making very twisty, turny, kind of in-depth, long films, and this one's kind of simple. But I actually did a lot of research in that I checked a whole bunch of reviews online, and it's surprising how many people say this film is overly wordy. But the interesting thing is, those people who reviewed the film have read the novels, and apparently T-Lung's character is like a lone, like wolf, a man of very few words, very stoic. And in this one, they find that he actually talks too much in comparison to the novels. Also, in the novels, he's actually way more of a tragic character. He's got epilepsy. He's got a lame leg. Can you say lame anymore? I think we can say that, right?
I missed the memo that is a problem.
Yeah, I never know these days. I don't know what trap I'm going to walk into.
You can always go with the old failsafe of Gammy if
dodgy. Yeah, he's got a limp. Let's just put it that way. He's got a limp. He's epileptic, and apparently he's got this like terribly tragic life where he was assaulted as a child and all sorts. But people kind of complain that they don't go into that, and this version is like a kind of shadow of that version, who's way too wordy. But for us, this is very simple, not so wordy film, which is I find that quite interesting.
Slight little tangent. What popped in my mind there, have you heard the story of Sylvester Stallone on First Blood? What happened with that movie? It was like 3 hours long, or 2 hours, like in 40 minutes, very long. And speaking of wordy, he talked a lot. He had all these one-liners, like when the cop pulled him over, he says, "Oh, hey, easy rider," and these bad jokes. Sylvester Stallone hated it so much he wanted to burn the thing. So they edited it down from 3 hours to an hour and a half. So it's kind of similar, you're saying, like a novel down to, and they made him barely talk, but that's why it's so good. If he had one-liners, that ruins it. You need him to be that vet, like.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
what it reminded me of, though. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Oh, but I think the point on there is that in Chang-Chi movies like Spearman, they want to just tell you the history, and now Guok Choi is going to go off. And I think I keep bringing up Flag of Iron because there's similarities where once Guok Choi goes away, and Flag of Iron is a remake of sorts of Duel of the Iron Fists. And when he goes away, he's just constantly be attacked by assassins. This is like a version of that where I'm sure you guys noticed. I don't think outside of T-Lung, I hope I'm saying her name right, Mrs. Chu and her father, is there one good guy in this movie? Every single extra and individual. Okay, and I'm sorry, the girl in the alleyway with the golden flower scene.
Yeah, and the guy selling the food. But the exceptions are there. That's about it.
You just have to, I picked up early on, okay, I can't trust anyone, and even the kids bringing them food, it's everything's so poisoned.
That's true.
The kid, and I was like, wow. And that, I thought maybe they could have nuanced that a bit, where maybe they would, because I just had to assume literally every single person was out going to murder him, and it happened except for a few. But that's an interesting take, because they normally have it where, like I said, when Guok Choi goes away, when they send him away in Flag of Iron, you're wondering which guy's going to be the bad guy a little bit, the assassin.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting in that this film presents a lot of characters. And it's essentially a video game. It's boss fights after boss fights after boss fight, really. And then there's a MacGuffin that you're trying to get. It's very simple in that respect. But the characters in this film are they bring the whole thing to life. Not just T. Lung as this kind of fantastic, like lone gunman thing, but Norman Chu's character, the effeminate character that gets his arm chopped off. Of course, Devil's Granny. You can't talk about this film without mentioning Devil's Granny. Lo Lei with his rose sword, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so colorful, this film, and it could have been so much less if he hadn't given us these vibrant, alive characters. It could have just been a very mundane kind of boss fight film. But I don't know. I just love that everyone's not only a villain, but they're a colorful villain, and also they're the most evil people that you'll ever meet, which I really
Shaun,
appreciate.
Shaun, I say keep going. We haven't got your overall take though.
Oh
officially.
yeah. It's funny. So I didn't know what to expect with this. I'll be honest with you. The first time I reviewed this film, the time where I don't even remember where I watched it, I gave this 3 stars. I kind of settled at a 3-star film. I watched
Letterboxd 4 or 5 is a max.
5. Sorry, I should say yes, 5.
Okay.
So I gave it 3. Watching it this time, I did not recognize myself that wrote that review. I don't know who that guy is, but basically he's a bit of a fucking idiot because I gave this 5 stars. I will honestly, I think this would be in my top 10 shores.
Whoa, there we go. There we go.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm at heart, I'm like I guess a kung fu shapes guy or shapes kung fu guy, and I'm very much kind of lean towards the Lau Kar Lung camp and like monkey kung fu and 5 super fighters, stuff like that.
Yeah,
this was just something else, and it absolutely blew me away. The action is so like you were saying, for 1976, it's crazy. Personally, I think this has better fight scenes than Human Lanterns, and Human Lanterns is years after. And it's got the same fight choreographers, which is insane. But
I'd have to think about that. But what's strange, I want you to keep going, but what's strange on this is it starts with that 70s, like when the sword fighting in the mid 70s, it has a slower feel to it when it starts, but this seems like it starts for 5 seconds and then it just ramps up. They had to have been ahead of the curve. Human Lanterns is so slow mo to me. They seem like different animals. The fights in that, he loves slowing that down. Yeah,
you're right. They're very, very different. But this, I don't know. This film it tends to hit everything that I really like about kung fu films in general. It just the vibrancy of it, the twists and turns, the fantastic hero. Let's be honest. If someone was going to ask me if I could have a prop from any kung fu film, T. Lung's weapon in this, I might consider that as an option. It's a hell of a choice. And I just loved everything about it. I was a little worried how they were going to stick the landing on this at the end. I was a little like, how are they going to pull this all together? Especially when it gets a bit meta, where like you are really Master Yu, and it's, or you become Master Yu. But they actually nail it. And it's got the typical kind of brash Shaw Brothers ending, which I really liked. And I love playing kind of spot the actor in this. That was a fun thing for me. Apparently, so I'm just going to go very quickly over a list, right, of people that are in this film. So you got T. Lung, Lo Lei. I'm going to talk about recognizable faces. Lily Lee, Fan Mei Sheng, Ku Feng, Norman Chu, right?
Yeah. Incredible.
Great. So then the smaller roles, this is one I didn't notice. Apparently Sharon Young Pan's in this film. I did not spot her in this film at all, but apparently she's in it. So Yun Hua is in this film, who I noticed, I spotted. Corey Yoon, I spotted. Feng Hakan, I spotted. The whole Yoon clan is in this film. Everyone, from Yun Wu Ping to Yun Shen Yi, all of them. Yun Biao is in this film, who I didn't spot, but when the Devil Granny does like 19 backflips in a row, I'm like, that's Yun Hua or Yun Biao. Easily, definitely. It's got to be. Mars is in this film. Alan Choi is in this film. And then Xiu Xia is in this film. I think that's how you say his name. And I spotted him as well. But that is an absolute just wealth of faces in this film. And for so many legends, and especially Yun Wu Ping is apparently in this film. And just think, in 76... was he not working on Secret Rivals at that point?
Yeah, probably.
In 76? It's crazy that he was essentially in this a background actor, but he was already a well-established fight choreographer in his own right. So yeah, it was fun. I did cheat. I did read the cast and then go, all right, I need to spot these guys. So I was looking in the background for them. I wouldn't have recognized otherwise.
I couldn't. Lily Lee, is she the one with the guitar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it took me a second because after you've seen so many of these movies. So Li Ching, is that sometimes I've seen
She's the
her
daughter.
name.
Yes.
She's a daughter. I know her from Man of Iron.
Yeah.
She's the real life daughter of I can't remember his name, but he plays all the old Shaolin abbots in so many films.
Yeah,
I think I've got his name actually here. Let's see, I've got his name written down.
The guy in the mansion, I know him from. He's
Ching Miao is his name.
That's not the father though, is it?
I don't know. Did Ching Miao play the father in this? I wasn't 100% sure. It's
yes, I think he did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're real life father
and daughter. Yeah.
Oh, really? He was the crippled Avengers. He was Chang Shing's master. They go to when they're all crippled. He was the guy that, because it took I'm sure you guys do that. You're watching. Okay, which one's this from? It took me a while to realize Li Ching is from Man of Iron, because I was looking at her like, because I just watched Man of Iron and reviewed it and loved it, and she was the romantic interest, like the woman they were pining for, the different men in that. I thought, and I know what I always think is funny. Ku Feng, he was probably not as old as he was in like Dynamo and later on, obviously, but they have him as the most acrobatic flying around Power Ranger guy. I thought it was gonna be this sprite like 19-year-old. Like they put Ku Feng as the guy jumping over like Superman. Like
it's so I don't know this film, and I think This film works on a number of levels. So as a Asian cinema fan or martial arts cinema fan, you can go in and take this very seriously and enjoy it for what it is. And it's a very well made film. The cinematography is nice. The landscapes, the kind of backgrounds where everyone is, the sets, it's all very, very lavish and beautiful. And I love, like Jason mentioned, it has this kind of dark element to it. But you can also enjoy it as like someone that enjoys Kung Fu cheese as well. You know, the characters are a bit silly. The Peacock fan is completely nuts as a weapon. I mean, that in itself is just like so you can use it 3 times. That's it.
I thought you could use it 6 times. He already burned 3 of them or something.
I think so.
Oh, was it 6 times? Okay.
Oh, who knows the max? I just know it was like a used good by the time they. But you know what's funny? On mine, it was called Peacock Dart. That's mine on my subtitle.
Oh, okay.
My subtitle had. I'm telling you this. You probably can't see it because you have to pay on YouTube. It had so many issues, like, but mine's called Peacock Dart, and
interesting.
That's it. That's when you talk about the weapons. That's like the other cast of this movie. The weapons are like their own cast. If you think about it, like everyone's represented by a weapon, and it's like. But I kind of didn't understand why they called it the Magic Blade. They could have called it the Peacock Fan, maybe a little more, because
it's for T Lung's blade.
It's T Lung's weapon.
No, I know why they did, but I don't know why they chose. Like that is such an amazing weapon, but. What I'm saying is the movie, everyone's talking about the Peacock Dart.
Completely. But it's like such a red herring. But I think you would be disappointed on some levels if they called the film the Peacock Fan or the Peacock Dart for how it's used in the movie. You'd be like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Because it's really.
They make up for it because the U.S. version we called 9 Deaths of the Ninja 2. You know, like when it gets it's so funny. We see the original title, the U.S. name it like the craziest.
Well, the original title to this, the Chinese to English translation, is actually Legend of the Condor Heroes, which is the name of the novel. So
that's what all the Brave Archer.
Am I wrong there?
Yeah.
Well, no. Brave Archer 4 is...
that's a different book. Like, because Jason's right. That Brave Archer 4 is from Legend of the Condor Heroes, and there's like a bunch of other movies like the Ashes of Time and what's the other one?
Did I get that wrong then? Because I put it into a translator and it literally gave me Legend of the Condor Heroes.
No, I think there's on the other commentary track. It's like Sky Sword in the something, or it's got like a very crazy. So before we post this episode live, right? I'll find it out and we'll stick it in our comment section underneath.
Okay.
But I don't think it's that, because that's the other big writer. That's not Gulong. That's
I bet the translator I used fucking AI to find me an answer, motherfucker.
I will double check. I don't have that to hand right now, and I don't want to run away. But it has a much longer, weirder, quite poetic title. But it's not. It's definitely not Legend of the
I'm going to blame AI. I'm just gonna
quite right. We should all be blaming AI.
It definitely wasn't me. It probably was.
But I'm missing a few. So there's other weapons too. It's like the low-lay one's a little more understated. That's kind of just like an imagery. They don't really talk about it. But it's like the weapons have their own part in this movie. It's like I love that aspect to it. And I actually thought, I don't know why, but when he cut his hand and his hand was poisoned, I thought they were going to have to chop his hand off and attach that to his hand, like some weird, like Evil Dead 3. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is why it's the magic blade, because it's like, and but then he came back. That scene was really great.
That poison beat was wild because it's like he was literally only poisoned while the incense was burning, right?
Yes,
and then
bizarre.
So he only had the time for it to burn down because then his hand just wasn't black anymore at the end of that. And they tried to kill him at the last little bit, and he had this great line of dialogue that I hope was translated in yours,
so
Jason,
good.
where he'd spent 20 years moving all of his acupuncture points like an inch
Oh,
over.
yeah. Wait, but they called it sinus in mine. Did they call it acupuncture in yours?
Oh, yeah, like pressure points.
So mine, when is it Norman Chu in that scene? I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, when he goes boom, boom, boom and hits his chest, and he goes, I've hit his sinus. He's paralyzed. I'm like, sinus?
Wow.
And then, like, I'm telling you, I think the guy was drunk. I hope we don't know who did these subtitles. So then later he goes, yeah, it took me 20 years, but I could move my sinus by 1 inch. And that was a flashback to us making Kung Fu movies we're little. Like, it's taken me 20 years. Like, it has that fun little campy energy.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Let me ask you, does it have the English dub on the Shawscope 3?
Oh, I didn't look.
No.
Okay,
because I don't think so.
I think that'd be a joy for me coming off of these. I had the rough subtitles. You guys had cool things like what Peacock Fan and acupuncture. Mine is, so I think it would be neat to see the, I'd love to hear the English dub if it had those classic voices on it. Let me
see if I can double check that while we're talking. I
Yeah.
don't think it does.
I didn't spot it either, but maybe I just wasn't looking properly.
Because sometimes, like, I think, Shaun, you've recently posted, and we're similar. On the ones I've known from back in the day, I tend to go to the English dub because I love the classic feel.
Yeah.
And I often talk about the grindhouse in the theater. There's something about the English dub. To be honest, it makes it, of course, a little campier and cheesier, but that's part of the fun sometimes, the whole vibe of it.
Mm-hmm.
But on this one, I think I needed it because of like the lost in translation and the subtitles. But certain movies like Heroic Ones, which one's my favorite movies ever, that's like even. I love the subtitles and I love the English dub on that one.
Definitely no English dub on the on the Arrow set.
Okay,
really? That's well.
I'm just Mandarin.
I'm kind of lucky in that I kind of grew up with all the English dubs, and I have a fondness for them. But now with the Shaw sets coming out, I'm purposely revisiting them with subtitles, just to see if I get like a new flavor or whether it feels like a new experience. And in a way, it does. It does take away slightly that cheesy element. Although I'll always respect the dubs because they're just so fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to do a video on who did the dubs. I knew it better before. It was this team that did Godzilla, led by a guy named Ted, and Tommy Retro from the Mighty Shaw Brothers group taught me this. But there's that secondary team that did Spearman of Death. I'll keep calling it the U.S. name, Flag of Iron, and did Legendary Weapons of China. And some of those voices are just so rough on that dub. So when you go to the subtitle of that, it really brings it up, the seriousness. Like I remember in Legendary Weapons of Kung Fu, as I knew it, he's like, man, you're really crappy. Remember like that? It would just have like really weird tones. It brings it down a lot, that second team. But when I hear that voice of Ted, who does that main, I call it the master killer voice. He always does usually the main character, Guok Choi.
Yeah, and I think he did a lot of the early Jackie Chan's as well, right?
Yes. And they say they're British. It doesn't sound very British to me. It's kind of like they kind of weren't, they weren't doing like the Queen's English. It sounds kind of like a mix to me a little bit. I love those dubs, but sometimes when I start watching the IVLs and you didn't have a choice, the movie felt so much more serious and like it took you a different direction, But Dragon, now it's your turn. Let's get your take. You gave us a little hint of what you thought. I'd love to hear your
Well, and you guys covered kind of a lot of the beats that I really love. Kind of for me, it's kind of unashamedly a wuxia movie, as many of the films on Shaw Scope 3 are. So there is actually very little hand to hand kind of choreography in it,
Right.
but they kind of found a way to really kind of give everything its own sort of feel. So each of the fights, it never kind of feels repetitive, which I really love. And some of them, some of the setups might be a little bit kind of weirdly goofy, like that. There's in the one in the forest, literally the guys assemble themselves in a big word on the ground. But I love that shit, right? It's something quite bizarre.
I like that scene. For how I didn't like the chess scene, I love the wood scene. Maybe because all those classic shots of T Lung were him in the woods. They took a lot of stills from that. I remember back.
Yeah. And it looks great. And the kind of the way that they've done the color staging with basically all of those guys. Often the villains will all have a very distinct uniform that works really nicely. And those guys are kind of like sort of B look of like kind of yellow and black sort of outfits, or kind of orangey and black outfits. It's really cool. But I love. I think Devil's Granny is maybe one of my favorite lower tier villains in any Shaw Brothers movie. She's just phenomenal, and that actress just knocks out the park. I love that she's kind of got a lone wolf and cub baby cart that sometimes she's just like cooking people in. Other times it seems to be housing like 20 dudes that jump out of it in the middle of that chess fight. It's like
a clown car.
Yeah, 100%. And she's just like relishing in her madness. And she's like, I think she's certainly the most colorful, but also the most tricksy, right? Where she's got the most stuff going on. And from her first appearance, when she's sending out the kids with the loaf of bread with blades stuck in the middle of it,
genius,
through to kind of her basically like throwing explosives, and I think she's also the one that poisons him. So I think she's kind of really instrumental amongst the kind of the villains, as making it really hard for the other ones to try and make their mark. Like, I love Norman Chu, but you could blink and forget that he's in this movie, really, because of how much he's kind of overshadowed by Devil's Granny. She's fantastic.
Well, speaking of, can you recall what I thought was the funniest? It had Norman Chu, the funniest Devil Granny moment in the movie. Does it stick out to you?
I don't know which one I know you pretty well, but I don't know which one you would kind of go for.
I like when she goes to eat T Lung. That bit's quite funny.
When she goes what?
She goes to eat T Lung when
that's it. No,
tries to take a bite out of him.
Well, no, mine is probably a subtitle thing. She tastes his blood, and in the subtitles it goes, "Oh, this is so delicious." And she goes in to drink more, and Norman Chu goes, "You're going to suck his blood right now?" He's like, "Get out of here!" Mine said, "Suck his blood" on mine.
Yeah, I think our son's a little different. But that's a great moment.
Oh, I cracked up. It's like she was so greedy. She's like, and I'm thinking, you just poisoned him. Are you sure you want to be like chugging down like his blood?
Yeah, it's funny. Some of the subtitles do add to the comedy. Earlier on, there's the wood devils that come out very early.
Mm-hmm. One guy inside a tree.
Oh yes. I think it's them. But Lole goes, "Oh, they're the most expensive assassins," and they get killed in like 3 seconds. I'm like, they're the most expensive assassins you can find. They die immediately.
And I had instant 5 element. I wrote this in some notes here, like. That was like a 5 Elements Ninjas precursor with them coming out of the tree, out of the ground, and
100%. Yeah.
And I thought, like, I wished Lily Lee had been in it a little bit more. And R.I.P. Lily Lee, because we lost her very recently, actually, just within kind of the last couple of months. But she, I think, still very young here at this point. I think she's probably barely 20. She started at Shaw's when she was 14. Wow. Which is insane. As kind of initially kind of through their singing and dancing program, because there's a couple of like non-martial arts, non-wuxia movies that she did for Shaw's as well. So they kind of tested her in that realm, but then she kind of found her kind of forte with being in martial arts movies, and kind of great to see her playing a little bit of a younger character, because I think for me she's still the most recognizable as like the head of the family in 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, when she was not old at all. They just made her up to look an awful lot older, right? And so for years I the makeup fooled me, because seeing 8 Diagram Pole Fighter on such shitty quality VHS rips, it was hard to tell so much that was makeup. Now we're getting these new restorations. You're like, okay, now she's clearly very young and just been made up, but even younger here. And I think there's I noticed it when I just did my reviews for Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan recently,
which I've never seen.
Oh man, I was so not expecting that movie to be what it is. Like, incredible, like amazing.
That's what I'm actually going to watch next on the show.
I loved it. But she's not in that. But there is something. I wonder. I haven't double checked to see if it's the same editor. But there's something with Chor Yun, with the way that he's able to there's almost like, do you guys know who Peter Hunt is? Peter Hunt was like the editor who's sort of credited with kind of inventing the style of action that James Bond movies would use in their early stages, right? So he was the editor on Dr. No, and particularly on From Russia with Love. And he was became quite well known for really shortening the sequences an awful lot. So he was clipping things an awful lot more into the movement, rather than before that you would have almost seen like a whole little section of action play out before it moved to the next beat. And it can make
like the Green Hornet or something.
Right? Where it can feel really quite, I don't want to say clunky, but it can feel very slow, and it's very purposeful. So you're seeing more, and it doesn't want to go too far in the other extreme and become like super shaky, fast cut camera work that we sort of relate to like the Jason Bourne movies or whatever in their later instances. But there's a sort of Peter Hunt-esque kind of style to the way that Chor Yun cut action, particularly when people are using trampolines, where he cuts into it really, really kind of so close to the wire that it feels really fluid and really nice when you're seeing people move. I'm thinking of Lily Lee when she basically, in about 3 moves, bounces from like firing stuff out of her weird guitar thing up onto the roof, and then she's gone, right, in like 3 short shots. But it's so fluid and so kind of slickly done that I they're on a trampoline, but it doesn't really matter. It just sort of like works as this wonderfully kind of fluid like sequence of motion that I just absolutely
was that I thought that might have been like a reverse shot because they jumped so high that I thought they would jump down in the boxes and then they'd reverse it.
Maybe for the last jump there, because she had like
it looked great though.
They had like a jumping sort of side flip first, and then she was up onto the roof. So kind of maybe they kind of matched the two.
It
There's
looked
definitely
impeccable. At no point in this one did I go, "Oh, that's a really dodgy looking reverse shot."
No,
it all looked super crisp and very, very.
And that was
well done.
everyone's escape from Kufang to everyone. I mean, they just like when someone, or they get on a horse and take off. But those jumps, it was really neat. I don't know if that's his style because I haven't seen too much of Chor Yun, but it's funny. It's
very similar to like what you'll see in when you guys watch Intimate Confessions, because there isn't as much. It's not as action heavy a movie, but the last reel of that film's really action heavy and beautifully staged, right? But there's an awful lot of that. But in Intimate Confessions, it's confined an awful lot more because they're often doing those sort of jumps inside a quite low room, but still sort of like kind of works. But yeah, I just find his kind of action. I think he's maybe by the fact that Chang Che and Lau Garlong's movies were so much easier for us to get. I think Chor Yun's action is kind of a little bit overlooked, right? In Shaw Brothers circles still, even, and hopefully this box set will kind of redress the balance because he was a phenomenal director, real kind of master craftsman. And I think
he's incredible.
By the time that he did
Intimate
Confessions, he'd done 80 movies before he came to Shaw's, right? So, and like non-Shaw Brothers movies, but he was already kind of incredibly well versed as a director, and I think there's a confidence to his stuff that's just really cool to see how he kind of puts things together, where he's clearly trying different techniques and different things, and some of it, it's amazing that it works because like the stuff with the kind of the guys forming the letter on the ground, or even the chess scene, the kind of big chess scene,
during
so
the chess
could easily
scene,
have not worked, right?
Right, during the chess scene, it's amazing. So you got the chessboard that's out on the ground, and then they're surrounded by a bunch of people, and all the people around the chessboard are all lit up, and then just randomly he like turns the lights off on them, and they all go dark, and it's just like if you think about it too much, like, well, why would that happen? But it looks so incredible. It just adds this kind of sense of mystery to the whole thing, and they just disappear into the darkness. It's so good. It's so good.
I was saying, you guys got me sad over here because I actually have my Shawscope was delayed a week and now it's been delayed another day. I'm like,
man. Hey, at least mine was damaged. So
I saw that, man. That was that was rough. They didn't use did it have like the kind of cardboard? There's like a really close fitting like kind of thick cardboard sleeve that Arrow were using over here that they've used for like volume 1 and 2 as well.
Yes, it is. So it's the book of discs inside that's damaged.
Oh shit!
So it's not,
which is confusing.
Out of box,
very confusing. I did reach. I'm not going to talk about who I ordered from because it's not their fault. I think this came from Arrow. So I reached out to them and said, "Look, is there anything you can do?" And they offered a full replacement. And do you know what? I'm going to take it on the chin. It's not worth, because they're an amazing place. I order from them all the time.
Oh, wait, who offered the replacement? The place or Arrow did?
The place I ordered it from. I'll tell you, it's Orbit DVD. Orbit DVD,
cool.
phenomenal. I order from them all the time. They were like, send it back to us. We'll pay to have it sent back to us, and we will send you a full replacement.
Wow.
And you know what? I don't even want to be petty like that or picky. I will take it on the chin. I will keep it, because at the end of the day, they're an amazing website that like I buy from all the time. And if I send this back to them, they're just left with a damaged Shaw Brothers set.
I think that they'll probably be able to, because Arrow stuff in the States, that it comes, I think it's handled by MVD. And
yes,
MVD are, from what I understand, just legit, straight up, really
very
decent.
Good. Yes.
Decent, kind of honest, great company, right? And so I suspect there's a very good chance that Orbit will be able to get compensated. But I think Shaun, I like your stance. I like.
I'm going to keep it. It's not at the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. And when I open it and see it, it's just like, well, it's cardboard. It's who cares? It's not going to kill me.
Well, yeah. The only reason I'd push back on that is I've been having a lot of issues with Amazon, and there's kind of like thresholds. Like,
fuck Amazon over. Get as many replacements from Amazon as you want. They're fucking.
Well, no, what I'm saying is like when something's $30 or less, that's a certain thing, But when you're pushing up at that $150, if I were you, I would think about, because that's such a prized possession. $150. I'd even meet them in the middle, say, hey, do you have a used copy? We'll just swap the book out or something.
I can see both sides. I think if it had been like something that had happened because Orbit didn't package it properly, that's one thing, but that's not the case here, right? This is a case where they've looked at it from the outside, it really looked perfect, right?
The packaging was perfect. It was honestly, it was packed so well. So
where the Amazon thing, because Amazon make zero effort, right? They're literally. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to the time when machines take over packing boxes. I don't want to see anyone out of work, but that once AI and robots take over, that shit will be packed much more efficiently, because they literally make no effort, and they'll put a tiny thing inside a giant, massive mailer, so it's just banging about inside the whole time, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't help that the post office guys are playing soccer, like with
I mean,
not always, but I just, when you see the back of those, like especially Amazon, it's sometimes just a mess in there, and that doesn't help, because I think even it's the packaging mixed with guys just throwing. It doesn't say fragile, and I heard when it says fragile, they still throw.
Yeah, but just to clarify, Orbit DVD are amazing. Everyone should be buying from them. They're a phenomenal kind of small boutique Blu-ray store. Buy from them, but don't buy the titles that I want, because they sell out very quickly, and I want to get a copy. So stop doing that.
Yeah, I ordered from them once, and they sent a nice little card. They had like the card's really neat. It was like a Black Sabbath. I love Black Sabbath Volume 4, I believe, and then they used that image and made like an Orbit DVD logo.
They're absolutely great. They're wonderful people. So sorry, I went off track for a second.
No, I was saying, because I'm just like salivating for the Shaw Scope 3. Something about this. I know it says Wednesday now. It was Tuesday, now it's Wednesday. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, I don't know.
Although the news about Shaw Scope Volume 4, I am not too happy about. That it is going to be entirely non-martial arts.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's what they said about this one. That's what they said about this one coming in.
True. Apparently, someone's confirmed it. I don't know who.
I would take that with a pinch of salt, because I've heard a couple of titles that are on there, and that doesn't fit.
Good to know. All right, then, forget that.
What was the volume? What was the Shaw Scope 3? Didn't have a similar thing? It was be horror and a little bit of gangster and not martial arts.
I think I think James Flower, the producer, had said that it was going to have less of an emphasis on kung fu, and then that got lost in translation, and people took kung fu to mean all martial arts. But really, Volume 3 is essentially really heavily wuxia, right?
Oh yeah, and it's fantastic.
I think there's a couple of omissions in Volume 3 that I would be very surprised. I would be flabbergasted, in fact, which is something that I'm not often, if we didn't get Return of the Bastard Swordsman at least on Volume 4. Because why, right? Why would you admit, right? And I know one title that I can't say what it is yet, but it's an absolute firm favorite of mine, and it's got a bunch of action. It has Kuchoi in it, and that's about as much as I think I can say. But it's kind of one of his lesser seen my wife's favorite kung fu movie. If anyone's listened to my channel long
Oh,
enough,
I'm not gonna say it. I know what it is now. I know what it is. Yeah.
And that's been confirmed. I'll tell you after. Right?
Okay.
That's been confirmed. So I think we'll get some surprises. I'm more intrigued to know what color it's going to be. Right? Is it going to be gold? Is it going to be yellow?
Yeah, I don't know. We're living in good times, guys. It's
very much
very
so.
good for. I mean, unfortunately, we are getting that Lady in the Boss cover art. I shouldn't talk about that actually.
Oh.
We're going to be overly mean to that, but
yeah, that's rough. That's
especially
if that's a bare bones disc, right? Because I would have done a commentary for that for free because that movie is like massively underrated. But
I've never seen it.
Oh, dude, I'll be interested to know how you feel because it's weird for a Lau Gar-lung movie, and forgive us our little tangent here because it's just kind of a basic way, but it's one of the Lau Gar-lung movies that gets out into contemporary Hong Kong in a way that you never see. Like he's filming guerrilla style on the streets. It's got
right. He doesn't do that much at all.
Hardly ever.
I'm excited
Some
for it.
Crazy wacky outfits. Like it's almost like Shaw Brothers meets BMX Bandits. Have you ever seen BMX Bandits?
Of course I've seen BMX Bandits.
And some of the outfits are just straight up insane. Like some of the stuff that Gordon Liu dresses up in that movie is just super wacky. And it's a wonderful companion movie to My Young Auntie because they're both sort of exploring the same theme, but with very different energies, right? And there's a kind of brattiness to Cara Wei's character in that when she first steps into the scene that's very different to her energy in My Young Auntie. But it's, again, Lau Gar-lung was always obsessed with that kind of essence of true martial arts and how it relates to the outside world. But this is him being like, okay, what are the youth of today? What would their perspective be? So all the kids are kind of wanting to be like out at the club and super into kind of like exploring that sort of world. And Cara Wei brings that whole energy, but is also incredibly skilled as a martial artist in it. So it's just great, really great fun. And there's a last fight in the gymnasium that you've maybe seen clips of. That's just,
of course, I have watched that. Yes, I had to.
It's just really, really good fun. But yeah, it's a weird one in his filmography, but. Yeah, the 88 films released. I hope it's got some extras on it. I hope they've at least squeezed out a commentary because
I know I looked. It's just stills and two other things. Well, it's funny because I've been trying to use my YouTube more of like posting about the releases. I just do that like instead of stories.
Yeah.
Within 1 minute, the guy goes, "That is the worst cover art I've ever seen." So then I took a closer look, and I kind of didn't really look at the face. Seems like they messed up and tried to like redo.
It's weird. I don't know who did it. I have no idea who it is, and I don't want to like rip on anybody's art.
Oh yeah, it just
because it's objectively But I just wish. I mean, it just makes me really miss because I feel we'd really hit a groove like from the time that they started releasing them dual country. So when they started releasing them in the States as well, and we got like the Chinese Boxer and the ones that came out just after that, they were kind of collaborating with Frederick Ambrosino a lot. So we got some really awesome extras on there. Yeah. That Human Lanterns one we looked at last episode with the Kung Fu Bob cover art again on that. And I just kind of hope they were gonna.
Well, you declared like that period a peak thing. I can't remember whose interview. I was watching an interview with you, and it might have been I can't remember who, but they said, "What is your favorite release of all time?" And it was right in that period. And you said 8 Diagram Pole Fighter, the American release, I believe.
Yeah, that's Arrow.
That's Arrow, but that was kind of that period where we're getting dual sides, and the extras were just beefed out, or the different extras on. It actually confused me because. Is it righting wrongs that on one of them on the English or there's 4 versions and like you could watch like different alternate endings, but I don't think the American had that. So you had to be careful which one you wanted to get on.
And the American one has that great documentary though. It's got like that kind of amazing kind of like world of martial arts documentary. I can't remember the exact title, but it's like a sort of 2 or 3 hour classic documentary hosted by John
I think Leon brings that. It's older.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leon loves that one.
In the UK, it was known as the best of martial arts.
Yeah.
And, my mum bought it for me on VHS when I first got into Van Damme. This is long before I got into Kung Fu cinema. She bought it. I got into there's a film called Lionheart in the US. It's called AWOL in the UK. And it's a Van Damme film, one of the first martial arts films I ever watched. And my mum saw that, and then she got me the best of martial arts. And I remember specifically it had clips from Duel to the Death on it. And I was just like, what the hell is this? And it kind of opened up a little bit of a door for me.
That's on the Vinegar Syndrome release in the States, and then 88 put it out in the UK with Brandon Bentley's randomizer. So depending on, you never know exactly which one of the 3 endings is going to be on.
It's a great idea. It's
great,
kind of
it's really cool.
Yeah, I got.
I ended up. I mean, I think just for the sake of overall, I ended up selling my British version and just sticking with the Vinegar Syndrome one because of the Tony Stella art on the front of that.
Oh wow! But you didn't need that alternate endings. That didn't keep it for you.
I would find that I wouldn't use it after the first couple of times of checking it out. There was an ending that I kind of prefer, so I would just generally be kind of opting for that one. And I think you've got the alternate endings on the Vinegar Syndrome release too. You just can't randomize between them. No. And I can't afford, I don't have the space anymore.
Oh yeah.
Nor the funds to double or triple dip on stuff. So.
Oh, I respect that. Speaking of endings, could we go over the Magic Blade ending? Because I have questions on that.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. That's
no. I love little tangents, of course. No, bringing it back. I felt the ending of this really made the whole movie. It was worth the price of admission anyway. Yeah. It just brought it all together, and I did sometimes when movies like Inception and Fight Club, sometimes they take a weird ending. Like, in Fight Club, when I was younger, I didn't really like the fact that Tyler Durden wasn't real. Like sometimes, and as I got older, I can appreciate it. Like that's the point of the story.
Yeah.
But when I'm young, when things go into dream, it was all a dream and stuff. I lose it. But when they were showing T Lung in that mirror, like you're Mr. Yu, I was like kind of teetering towards some of that disappointment, but they just made it all make sense. And they had to fake out with Lo Lei, which only right at the very end did I realize that was Lo Lei, right? Like whenever T Lung realized.
I'm glad you didn't watch the trailer because the trailer spoils.
Oh, really? Oh no!
Yeah, the original trailer just absolutely gives you every fucking beat, right? Something that people always blame American movies for doing, but no, that was like the Hong Kong trailer for that.
Jesus.
So I call that the Terminator Genesis effect. Terminator Genesis, they knew it was going to flop, so for some reason they're like, we're just going to tell them. They showed John Connor was this guy, and I watched. I was like, I just saw the whole movie, and then I still tried the movie, that's a whole other thing. That was horrible, but that's a bummer when they ruin stuff in the trailer like that.
I actually like Genesis. I've got a love-hate relationship with because it's got Lee Byung-hun in it playing the Terminator for a while, and I love him so much. Right,
I don't hate that actor. I don't hate.
Oh, really? I thought Dark Fate, which wasn't amazing, it was good, but I thought that crushed Genesis for me. Dark Fate.
Look, Dark Fate is good. It's a good film. People say it's terrible. I really enjoy it. The action is superb in that film.
The only thing that lost me on that is. I don't know the only thing that lost me on that is like I had goosebumps in the theater and I knew they were going to see Arnold, but when he opens it up, it suddenly felt like a Saturday Night Live skit, like he's in a flannel, like cooking pancakes or something.
Yeah.
I was like this, and he's like, "Hello," I can't do an Arnold voice, but that kind of felt very Saturday Night Live. Like we finally have Arnold, like he's here. Like, well, he was in Genesis, but that was convoluted with. I did like the Genesis fight at the observatory at the Griffith, like the throwback to when Arnold landed, he's fighting. I was like, this is great. But whenever that guy with the curly hair that was John Connor, I thought he was horrible. The whole middle just lost me. And they, Dark Fate I thought was really solid. I thought that was solid, but I guess it didn't make enough money. It's done now, I think. Until of course there's going to be 30 more. There'll be 30 more reboots with.
But Magic Blade.
Yes.
The ending, great ending.
But what I was saying is like, so when Mr. Yu did show up and he was telling him his plot and what he wanted to do, it was just so shady. One thing I want to ask you guys is, so I thought it was very interesting. They had, now is that Mr. Yu's wife that he has go to try to be the temptress?
Good question. My beat on it was that was Lo Lei's wife,
okay.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
but maybe she was. The one who sort of basically offered herself, like that's Channy Ten-Ni, right?
Right. But she did say this was Mr. Yu's idea, but it's confusing because Mr. Yu
could be Lo Lei, or it could be the actual Mr. Yeah.
So that moment where so she's offering herself up, and then he says, "No, I'm here for Mrs. Chu." And this almost sounds like our last episode. We have similar actresses and wives, But he says when and she gets so mad that so Mrs. Chu comes in, and strangely, this was a nice fake out. She starts acting the same way. She's undressing. I'm like, wow, that is not her character. But obviously, what it really was is she was showing. And my thing was called the poison dark coat. In my, peacock dark cloak. And that was brilliant, and that faked you out a little bit because you didn't know what was going on because the father whispered to him. But I didn't understand. The deal was if he gives over that, they won't keep her and kill her. So he gave over to Mr. Yu. Was it just an honor thing that they still had to have the duel? Because I thought it was over. They were going to be able to leave because he turned it over. But he said, no, I still have one more duel. Is that just like his honor and they have to have the match?
Yeah,
still?
I think that's like just the element of being a hero, right? You've got to take out who essentially is the bad guy, and he was the bad guy.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that was very...
I think we kind of also got a sense that like when T-Lung cuts open the mask, he's not surprised that Lole is inside it, right? He knows. Right. I think he knows that it's kind of all been leading up to that, and that's kind of what he set out to do initially, was to kill Lole's character.
He's been essentially looking forward to this duel where he can finally beat him. Yeah.
And I think that the stuff, there's a couple of things that we should maybe mention, because Choi Yun, unlike Chang Che and Lau Gar Lung are two. There's a beautiful turn of phrase that Jason, you coined in our last episode of being the two train tracks, right? And I fucking love that analogy because it's so true for probably all three of us. They were the staples that took us into the wonderful martial world of Shaw Brothers. But Choi Yun, I think, maybe had a slightly more healthy relationship with the genders and with sexuality in general. So you see tits in his movies, right? Which is kind of quite surprising if you're so used to Chang Che and to Lau Gar Lung movies, because it's like,
much so.
Wow, okay, right? Because there was certainly, we saw that a lot more in the Shaw's exploitation in their horror movies. A lot of that was just a blatant excuse, real kind of definitely exploitative, where you would have slow motion of a girl running topless on the beach for like a 3.5 minute long shot, and you're like, okay, I get
Challenge of the Tiger.
That sort of vibe, yeah. But I don't get that from Choi Yun's movies, where I think he genuinely, it's more, there's a shade of eroticism in it rather than it being exploitive. I think he's doing it in a way that feels a little bit more genuine. And I think there's a body double for Tianyi Ten, because she definitely wasn't up for the idea of doing nudity.
No.
And the cinematographer had a fucking challenge there, but pulled it off so nicely, where he shrouds her face in darkness, right? And really
that's how I knew. It was a cool shot. I was like, they wouldn't obscure her face that much. Like
if
they
it was
had
actually her, 100%, right? And there was definitely the other two girls who were there purely because they'd been paid to be naked, and they were the two girls in the background that he's just like, nah, not interested in. But I think Tianyi Ten's character was really kind of, she was great for what little screen time she had, as kind of basically being this sort of, there was a power that she kind of had that wasn't through how she was fighting. She has her power was in offering herself, and you could tell that's why she was so gutted that he kind of didn't go along with it, because he only had eyes for the other girl. And I think it was a nice kind of beat to kind of bring around that last little kind of act. And there's a House of Trapsy element too to that last reel, with the kind of the gates dropping down kind of around the place. And I think he just staged these areas in a way that was always really inventive and
it's smart. I'll admit, I genuinely thought old Mr. Yu was going to get away at the end.
Yeah.
I thought when his throne dropped on those chains and he got in it, I was just like, oh, I didn't expect this ending. He's going to just ascend and disappear. And then when T-Lung, he tricked me.
He's had that blade on a chain, right? And never once...
Well, maybe that's why they call it the magic blade. That moment. I mean,
there you go.
The reason I didn't know is because I was watching on YouTube, which was a different vibe, and I caught the runtime. So he was like, "We're going to battle another day." I'm like, "Dude, there's 2 minutes left. Like something has to go down now, unless there's a Magic Blade 2 that's a different name." Which I thought would have been cool.
Sort of is in a way. He plays that character 3 times.
Yes. Oh, that's great, because I need more of him. Like I said, he's the biggest. He's so cool. I mean, it has that spaghetti western middle period T-Lung. This is the precursor to Avenging Eagle that me and Dragon spoke of, the 5 o'clock shadow T-Lung, where he's like, And let me ask you, I am probably because I don't have Shawscope 3 yet, but do Wuxia movies have a lot more of this honor in it? Because there's a lot of elements I'm not as well versed in Wuxia, but I've seen decent amount. But it's strange when the guys he fought the whole movie are walking him in the end. It's
like trying to fight again.
No, and they're like buddies or something. And then he battles them all again. But it's just strange. Like, I won't hurt an unarmed person. You'll see that in kung fu movies, but that's just like a one-liner. Even the villains, like, it was strange. There was like this code, like a Wuxia like warrior code that they were honoring, and it seemed like Mr. Yu that's the strange thing. If T Lung did accept his offer to be Lo Lei, which he seemed to be kind of toying with for a second, obviously he wasn't, but it seemed like in the Wuxia world that could have worked, even though he was been trying to be murdered, poisoned, everyone, it seemed like that would have, like Mr. Yu wouldn't have plotted against him again. He just needed a guy in there. And that's why T Lung was like, wait, you didn't care that Lo Lei died, So.
Yeah, he just kind of wants a new sort of figurehead. I think, but I always took it as part of it is like if he can win over the guy who's currently the best guy in the martial world, right? And if he can basically seduce him with money and with women, he doesn't have to kind of go head to head with him, and he can kind of still puppet control the martial world through his sort of like, because he's getting to an age where he's not as physically capable,
right?
And so, but he still doesn't want to relinquish control. So he's the real master. You wants to still be the master, but by having this sort of avatar, a younger avatar out in the world, it's a kind of an easier way for him to kind of, I guess, keep his power a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that's the wonderful thing about the Wuxia world that you were mentioning, Jason, about the honor. I think the kind of heroic martial artists within the Wuxia world are typically, very heroic and very honorable and kind of live by this particular code, a bit like Bushido. But the villains in Wuxia world are the worst, most awful people. They will put needles in a bun and try and kill you with that.
I could tell you wanted to see that death. I could tell you wish like.
Of course. But
how would that work?
Yeah, I think there's a nice kind of split there between the martial, because when there's like two quote unquote heroes fighting each other, just look at Duel to Death. I mean, it's a gory, horrendous ending between the two, but there's a sense of honor in it. But yeah, other villains would be, very dastardly and do many underhanded things to kill the hero.
I probably should tell you, Duel to the Death is on my watch pile, so we've probably got to add that down the line. I've not seen that.
You haven't seen.
I own it.
Dragon, we need to do something. My anger is building.
We're going to be doing this podcast when we're 80.
Yes.
I know.
Which is a wonderful thing.
How about we don't do them once a month? How about we do them daily?
Exactly. I'll just have my watch pile here,
Oh, good stuff. Well, Duel to Death, you're in for one hell of a treat.
Okay, cool. For some reason, that came out with. Okay, cool. That came out the same time as what's the other one? Ricky.
Okay.
Ricky. But I mean, like a similar. Is it? Those movies were very different, obviously. But aren't they both like battling out in some beach scene? Isn't there some sort of? Or are they just completely different? I thought there was
not in Story of Ricky.
Okay.
That's very prison centric.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a Cat 3 one technically, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the Story of Ricky is basically. Have you ever seen the anime Fist of the North Star?
No, I've never seen any anime, but someone made me buy Ninja Scroll for my first way in, the movie Ninja Scroll. He said, and I own it here, but I still haven't got to it yet. I know I have a lot of holes.
There's probably a little bit more similarity between Duel to the Death and parts of Ninja Scroll. But the reason I mentioned Fist of the North Star, because like the Story of Ricky's closest that we've ever seen to an effective kind of live action version of Fist of the North Star, where you have a guy who's so powerful he can punch you and your body will explode. Where he's literally punching holes in people, and it's like it was a movie that went so far, it kind of ended the main actor's career for a good chunk of time. Like he just couldn't work again because it was so fucked up and so extreme in the way that it was doing stuff. And it's
now
amazing.
Look at him.
Yeah,
he's an absolute megastar now.
He's back.
Fancy one. Yeah,
and he's so good, right? He's a really great, charismatic leading man, and he looks incredible in Ricky O. He's like in ridiculous shape. He's got like it's almost like Bruce Lee on steroids physique, right? He's like he's a size in that movie, right? But no, couldn't be more different than Duel to the Death. Duel to the Death is much more in the world, in the Magic Blade-esque world, where it's a little bit more on some levels grounded. I mean, there is a bit of like people flying and in seated poses through walls and stuff, which is so dope.
It's bonkers.
Yeah. Maybe why this had
so
less
much
flying.
ninja fun, right?
Yeah, maybe this had less flying because it was earlier on, because the wire work became more advanced. Like it was more trampoline and reverse jumps until about late 80s or late 70s. I mean,
which I think is maybe why I prefer this era, because although they're still doing some of the wuxia traits, it doesn't feel as. And plus, they haven't started doing the ridiculous over sped up sort of hyper ramping in the camera.
They really don't. It
that I
looks
struggle a bit with in the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the undercranking or?
Bit of both. I mean, there was just like there was so much kind of crazy speed up. When I think of things like I struggle a bit with like Moon Warriors and
Blade of Fury.
Yeah,
Blade
sadly,
of Fury is a fantastic film, but the undercranking in that is beyond anything. It looks like Donnie Yen's Legend of the Wolf. I mean, it's that bad. It's
and even a little bit of that in the Once Upon a Time. I think it was like a Choi Hark really liked playing around with those things. I think there was once they switched over to like non-linear editing.
Yeah,
there's some functions that I think some directors should have been banned from using, right? Because it was like no, less is more. Right?
Iron Monkey has a lot of it. Iron Monkey has a lot of speed ramping.
I think it's the upping of the ante. Like once they use more of that undercranking, and then the audience was reacting, it's probably hard to go back, you know. Yeah. But I think there's some resets. Like, of course, like we were talking about Wirework, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I remember seeing that in the theater, and I loved it. It worked for me that they were floating. Yeah. I understood because it was like it's
poetic. It's
right. It was poetic. There was a suspension of disbelief, and it worked. But when it got back to Ip Man, it felt like that was like a traditional throwback. I didn't feel that was super undercracked. I felt that was more, you know, like a little more traditional. It was faster. But
I think they kind of mastered it in the later years, where undercranking is there, but you really have to look to see it. If you have a nice suspension of disbelief, and you're like, okay, Donnie Yen's really moving that fast, you can kind of trick your brain and go, yeah, legit, he goes that fast. And I think I would even go as far as to say some of the 90s stuff with Jet Li, he moves so fast, but you can be like, well, Jet Li is that fast. But at one point, I think in the 90s, they just ramped it to just an insane level. And it just looks there's a certain group of martial artists online at the moment that make short movies, and they have brought back undercranking. And
is that your friends or no?
No.
Okay.
I believe they use it to an extent that looks more like Donnie Yen's worst stuff than the good stuff. It's way too overdone. They're fantastic, by the way. I won't talk about them much. They're fantastic, but their undercranking is like, whoa, that's a little too much. And I think there is this very fine line between bad undercranking and good undercranking. Right. Yeah. And I think they kind of mastered it, and the Ip Man movies did it well, I think.
I think Samuel was the master of that. Samuel had found that sweet spot where instead of like doing like 24 or 25 frames, he would never drop under 20. So he would literally like 2021
of course. Enough. Yeah, I think people will tell you. People go, well, Jackie Chan was never undercranked. Yes, he was. Jackie Chan, Wheels on Meals, Dragons Forever. He was undercranked to shit, but Sammo Hung did it so well that it looks legit. And I think that's fantastic filmmaking. That's genius filmmaking. Where we
could explain. Yeah. I would say we could explain to people listening, undercranking basically is they film it, they crank the camera down to a slower speed. So when they film it at that speed, when you play it back on the normal reel, at the normal speed, it's hopefully a subtle, subtle. And I think sometimes it feels like they mess it up because, like, I always talk about the Venoms film, but on Sword Stained with Royal Blood, it's very undercranked. It's very strange because that one's like very speedy, and it's like, wow, did they mess up the setting, or are they trying it a little bit? And you can tell when the guys in the background are also kind of like, you know, the guys watching start moving like kind of quick.
They look like those inflatable guys that you see. But I think the problem with undercranking, there's a lot of people think it's like a crime against cinema. So they're like, Jackie Chan can never be undercranked because it's just like when people who think that Jackie Chan did every single stunt that he ever did. There's nothing wrong with stunt doubles. There's nothing wrong with undercranking. It's a perfectly reliable way of making a film. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just occasionally someone will do it bad and it doesn't look great. Same as sometimes someone will do a stunt and they'll have their face way too long and you'll realize who it is rather than, oh, that's not Jackie. You know, you'll see that it's not Jackie. But there's nothing wrong with stunt doubles. There's nothing wrong with undercranking. It's not a crime against cinema. It's only a crime when Jackie Chan goes, yep, I did every single stunt I've ever done, and lies to his audience.
I think a lot of that was just I think he had to become. There's Jackie Chan, the man, and then there's Jackie Chan,
the legend, the myth.
Yes, and I think a lot of it was probably an easier conversation for him to lean into than having the 1 millionth question about like, so who would win, you or Bruce Lee in a fight, right? And the amount of times he's had to speak about Bruce Lee, I think you can see the pain in his eyes in those old interviews where it's like, fuck, we're doing this again, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of that where it's probably but also when English isn't your first language. So when you're being interviewed by somebody saying, so you do all your own stunts? Yes. Because the reality of saying, well, actually, there's a team around me, that's a longer conversation in a time when TV interviews didn't want to give someone 5 minutes to speak. They want to give you 5 seconds for an answer, right? So I don't think we should judge him too harshly. There's
not at all. And let's be honest, Jackie Chan did 90% of his stunts. That's amazing. You know, he did a lot of them. So that in itself is super impressive. Who cares if there happens to be one kick that he can't do and Chin Kai Lok has to step in and do it? Nothing wrong with that.
My hope is that eventually in future years to come, we will stop focusing too much on Jackie Chan as the actor and stunt performer, and we'll actually herald Jackie Chan, the director, because those first Police Story movies are like so well realized. As they've got some goofy moments in the middle of them, but when you kind of look at the plotting of them and how they've been staged and how he kind of balances his exposition with the action sequences and still gives the audience a little bit of the old goofy Jackie that they kind of, I think they loved so much from his
He's
kind
an
of
incredible director. Miracles.
I think
Miracles is an epic.
Yeah, completely.
I think that jump to Police Story has to be one of the biggest jumps in the whole like genre, because there's a lot, but just meaning like you could feel it building up, but it's such a turn of the page. It changed the whole 80s, you know. It just
I think we should we'll put these ones on the list as well for some point. We can really dive into them, but I think so much of it is like born out of disappointment and a degree of resentment. So that's because of what happened to the Protector and Battle Creek Brawl.
Yeah,
him being like, fuck, okay, and him particularly with the Protector, and I think really it was having that experience of how it so much didn't work. And this is not a total slight on the Protector, because I actually quite enjoyed the Protector, but I think the experience he had on that and probably feeling like his wings had been clipped so much is what made Police Story so much.
He had a vision, and like he's like, oh, finally, I'm going to go and make Police Story, which is truly my vision. And
completely.
And you guys have read his autobiography, I Am Jackie Chan?
Yeah.
I haven't read that one. I've read his. Wait, which one's the most recent one?
This one's like 1998, right when Rush Hour came out. They were probably
that's the one I've read. Yes.
That I remember reading. I was like 19, and for me, I often talk about the books. The books are like the left arm, and the movies the right arm. When I can read and get those insights, I was running back because I had a lot of those Killer Meteors, crappy VHS, but I could see it through a different light. And even if a movie's not that great, having that story of how he didn't like Lo Wei and that friction makes the movie almost as a historical piece you can enjoy way more. And you hit it on the head, Dragon. It's just I was surprised how much he wanted to break into America. Like that was like his life's goal in a way, it seemed like. So when he did those Battle Creek Brawl and Protector and they flopped, it was so, like you said, this was a complete answer to that. He's like, I'm going to go back, and he took some elements of it, you know.
I think it's ironic a little bit that he wanted to bring his style to America, like his true Jackie Chan Hong Kong style to America. And then when America finally did get his style, they were just like, oh, we're going to water it down and make it, you know, just exactly. We'll make Rush Hour. Yeah.
I'm going to do a Magic Blade style master stroke of linkage here, because Jason, you mentioned Killer Meteors, and Killer Meteors and To Kill with Intrigue, both also written by Gulong, who wrote the screenplay.
There's a book reference.
So I think it kind of same origin story, though very, very, very different kind of scripts or very different stories that they'd adapted, right? And I think they really dialed down the wuxia aspects of those two stories. You see a little bit more in Killer Meteors, and if you think about Killer Meteors, it does have an awful lot of similarities to the Magic Blade in terms of some of the weapons, and particularly the type of character that Jimmy Wang Yu plays in Killer Meteors is very much cut from the same cloth as T-Lung's character in the Magic Blade. So there are certain tropes that he kind of really liked to use. And I think I've got it open in front of me, but there's as far as the Shaw Brothers side of things, there was 2 other times that T-Lung played that same role. So he was playing Fu Hongshui. He does a small cameo in Death Duel in 1977, and also a prequel to the Magic Blade called Pursuit of Vengeance, which I have not seen, but
Neither have I.
tracked down, also from 1977. And then he brought the character back in Frankie Chan's remake of Pursuit to Vengeance called The Warrior's Tragedy from 1993.
I haven't even heard of that one.
No, that's our Shawscope 3 book. That's our little further viewing notes bit at the bottom.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying we're coming around the bend towards like an hour 20. You want to give our final thoughts here?
Yeah, we can definitely wrap this up. Yeah. So I'll just say, absolute classic. I think this one is way up there for me. Unfortunately, I think this podcast might end up with me every single week going, well, that's in my top 10. And just because sometimes I just feel like, I don't know, this film was so fresh to me. It just felt so unique. And especially as someone who's kind of stepping slightly outside of his kind of old school kung fu box, if that, like Mr. Chess Boxing and World of Drunken Master and things like that. I'm a very, like I said, shapes guy, and finally dipping my toe into more wuxia and watching this it was just eye-opening for me. So colorful, so vibrant, 5 stars across the board. I absolutely loved it. A true classic in my eyes.
Awesome. Yeah, on my end, if someone's listening to this and want to check it out, I'd say watch it on YouTube if you don't feel like buying the Shawscope 3 just to get that nice HD version. I mean, of course, grab Shawscope 3, but if you don't want to spend that money, and I think people will enjoy it, but I think watching it twice for me, because it's a lot of singular sentences, so it's not like wordy, but each line's very powerful, so you have to really pay attention, because if you look away for a minute and miss 2 lines, you missed like a big piece of it. And so I say watching it twice brought it all home. And I think the philosophy, not chasing the power and money, the moral of the story, how it all came together in the end. And there's when he's talking to her in the woods, he brings that up. He said, like we said, my subtitles were different, but it said, when I chased money and happiness when I chased money and power, I was the least happy. The man who just, all he does is chase his career is the saddest, and different things like that. Nice. That was like a foretelling of what the point of the story was. And it's like all the shiny things in the world that want to pull you in, like greed and everything. They were all there to do that to him. And at the end, he was facing himself in the mirror. There's definitely, and it's probably in the novel too, but I saw the deep, deep meaning of all this, that it made it all worth it. That I think it's better. They didn't sit around at the beginning and said, oh, this is so-and-so, and he did this and this. The fact that it just trucked along in this directing style where it's nice, edited, good. I felt a little bit of, he's more in the Sun Chung camp of things, he feels like that type of director versus our 2 train tracks. And I think it's great. I definitely recommend to everyone to check out. And I think my thing that I would recommend, like I said, is to watch it twice, because I think the second time brings it all home.
Awesome.
Yeah. I would slightly contradict my brother on one little point and say don't buy it on YouTube. If you don't want to commit to buying the box set, just get the Arrow Player. The whole Shawscope set has gone up onto Arrow Player with all the extras.
I keep forgetting that. Oh, it's like $5, right?
Yeah, and often you can get like a free trial for 7 days.
Oh man, I spent $3 for the YouTube.
I never thought to, when you said you'd done it, I never thought to, I wish you told me beforehand, because the Arrow Player is unreal. And I think if a lot of people already have Amazon Prime, so if you have Amazon Prime, you can usually add it to your Prime subscription for free for like a week. And then you can get all of them with all the extras up there as well. And
that's
you get
rare
to see these beautiful new restorations. And I think in some cases, it went up onto the Arrow Player before the physical media release came out. Arrow's really trying to push their streaming service. So I think they've been staggering it. So I think the first 4 discs went up right at the beginning of November. And I think the next sort of stage is kind of going up at the beginning of December, if I can remember my timeline right. But however you end up watching the movie, definitely track down The Magic Blade. I assume that people listening to this have seen it. If you haven't, then I don't think we've spoiled all the beats, although we've spoken about a few things that happen in the story. That's not really the main experience that you're going to get from it. It's kind of watching the performances, watching how beautifully things have been staged. I think it's wonderful seeing Chor Yun start to get his props, because I think we'll recognize him as being a real master craftsman, where I'd absolutely put him up alongside our 2 favorites, but with a very different flavor and a different energy, and one that I think is nice to see. nice to kind of see somebody who is into like exploring some of the relationships between men and women in maybe the most healthy way out of any of the directors. Because I think I love the way that Lau Ga-lung looked at men and women together in relationships, always through a kung fu lens, particularly even like if you think of Executioners and Shaolin, right? Like everything was a battle, even your wedding night, right? And Chang Che was so trying to kick over the tracks of what came before him, so he was really trying to get away from what King Hu did. So he didn't really want to kind of explore yet another kind of female-led movie, and so he did his own thing, where there are some women in Chang Che's movies, but they're not really there with any sort of consequence. And so I think Chor Yun maybe had the most well-balanced chance for basically kind of highlighting the performer no matter what gender they had. And God, I'm sounding super progressive and I don't mean to be, but some of the female characters in Chor Yun's movies are exceptional, right? And particularly in The Magic Blade, we get to see a whole bunch of that. So it's just a really refreshing, great palate cleanser between some of the other movies that we saw. And I loved Volumes 1 and Volume 2 so much. But it's grouped together so many of my absolute favorites that I didn't know where we were going to go. And so there's been so many revelations with Volume 3, because it's sort of reminding me of films that I had seen before, and I'd seen The Magic Blade before, but I didn't enjoy anything as much as I did this time around. And I think a lot of that was how amazing this restoration looks. And it's really absolutely incredible, because particularly with some of the darker scenes, and we've spoken about it through the episode, where he does use shadow an awful lot. Particularly with kind of some of his character introductions and some of his staging, and it works so nicely when you're kind of seeing that properly, where nothing's blown out. And in that chess match, Jason, you're going to feel like you're watching it for the first time all over again.
Because this was really dark. One question about the genders: when they do that in a movie where they'll have a high voice, but it's clearly
she's been dubbed by a woman,
right, but it's clearly a guy, but it fools the other person, but not the audience. Do you know the history? Is that just a theater move where, like in Sword's thing with Royal Blood, it's so obviously a woman, but they're calling him a guy just because he's dressed slightly different?
It's something you see a lot in I think that I often think of those characters as eunuchs, right?
Yes, and there's villainy attached to eunuchs for some reason, right?
Well, I think part of that was like, if you deny yourself sexual pleasures, it make you super fucking powerful. I think there was an element of that. Sometimes I'd heard it done in relation to people who served the royal court. They would kind of do that partly to limit people in a way of making it so that you wouldn't be able to like sleep with anyone in the royal family, so you became sort of slightly safe because you were neutered in that way, literally neutered, castrated asexual in that way. Yeah, completely. But it's something that kind of cropped up a lot in the martial world as being a sign of villainy and power. So that you see it in Come Drink With Me, the kind of villain there. You see it a little bit in Secret Service of the Imperial Court. There's like the chief eunuch, I think, is one of the main villains in that. And certainly we see that in the character that we meet in the Zombie Town. I think Zombie Town's the wrong thing because none of those characters are reanimated.
House of Wax Town.
Better. In the House of Wax little village, we certainly see that character there who kind of gets the arm cut off. And I think that's our villain from 5 Super Fighters, right? Just a lot younger.
Is that him?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Kufang?
I think so.
No, not. Is it Kufang?
Let me just double check and make sure, because I think he is.
What's that character's name? I'm getting his name wrong as well.
I also love how in that scene where they're all dead and he throws that chess piece away, say don't touch that, and they all fall over.
And it explodes. Yeah.
When those two guys are sitting there, the sheer amount of cockiness, it's like equal cockiness. T-Lungs, they're both saying, like, I noticed in this movie, they're like, well, you're going to die here today. I'm just letting you know. Like, I love the cockiness on both sides.
Quan Fun, not Kufang, Quan Fun.
It's a Ku Quan Chung, yeah. And I think, and I'm just double checking his filmography because I'm sure it is. He went on to be like that main villain. In what year is 5 Super Fighters?
79.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of someone else then. I'm thinking of Quan Fung, the villain from 5 Super Fighters.
That's not. I think that's maybe me that's making the mistake. This is the dude who's also in. We'll see him in Bloody Parrot, and he's in. I think he's in. God, he's in a bunch. God, this is going to be a staple. Every episode I'm going to make.
I like it.
I'm going to basically confuse two people, and I've done it once again. God damn it! But no, not the guy from Five Super Fighters. But he's certainly very magnificent.
Some people might call this film woke in that moment, though, unfortunately, because this guy gets misgendered, and then he goes, "No, I'm a man," and then T-Lung's like, "Okay," he just moves on, like doesn't question it, doesn't. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, people call that woke these days.
Oh yeah. So do you want to bring us home? Oh, go ahead.
I will. Just one last thing. This is totally random. Totally random. I was researching the Magic Blade, and if anyone likes, I don't even know what genre to call it, kind of drum and bass music, there is an artist called Lazarus on Bandcamp, and he has this series called Shortcuts. And what he does is every single album or EP of his is named after a different Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie. And every single track is like a drum and bass version of him translating what's going on in the film to music.
Wow.
That sounds unreal.
It's really unique. And to be honest, the music's quite good. I actually quite enjoyed it. I only listened to the Magic Blade, but he has like volumes called I think it's called Sentimental Swordsman. He has multiple volumes of those, for the Return and so on and so forth. Anyway, yeah, a guy called Lazarus. I don't know him. This is not a plug. It's just something I just stumbled across, but I thought it was really, really cool. The guy's from Germany, and I just thought it was really
But do you think
cool.
it's on Spotify and YouTube Music or just Bandcamp?
Do you know what? I didn't even go to the extent of looking that up.
I should check that out.
While you're checking that, I should say, because you've reminded me that I should kind of give a wee little shout out to somebody who we discovered that we kind of lost earlier this year. So Jason Kane passed away. Apparently, I think around the time in June, but the word just didn't really kind of spread. And I kind of got a couple of messages just I think last week or the week before from a couple of people from Rodney and from Ricky, basically saying that he'd passed away. But Jason Kane was a massive, huge, indescribable impact on my childhood. He founded the Made in Hong Kong VHS label, so he was the first guy to bring sort of Shaw Brothers releases over to the UK on VHS. So he put out Five Venoms and Mad Monkey Kung Fu and Dirty Ho and John Woo's The Killer and Snake and Evil Shadow, Drunken Master. Basically, everything that formed my love of Hong Kong cinema came through that Made in Hong Kong.
It's where it all started for me there. Yeah,
I think for all of us in the UK. But he also had this whole other career where he made music under the name Depth Charge. Before the Wu-Tang Clan were putting kind of hip-hop samples over the top of beats, J. Soul Kane was doing it first. So he made sort of instrumental kind of hip-hop and electro-inspired music loaded with samples from movies. So often from spaghetti westerns and from horror movies too. There's a great track, if anyone wants to start, just do a search for Depth Charge Shaolin Buddha Finger, and you'll hear him taking a whole bunch of cuts from Shaolin versus Lama and putting them over the top of some really kind of great sort of dub bass lines. And he passed away, I think, from he did have a few long-term medical conditions, but right up until the very end, he was super active. He'd sort of segued away from music. He ran a record label right up until the end, but he was working more as a photographer, sort of street photographer. Beautiful street photography, which I think his Instagram page is still up and you can check that out. But he was photographing all of Ricky's events. So anytime Eastern Heroes had an event, he was there taking pictures at the events and just attending. And apparently I never got to meet him in person, tragically for me, but everyone who did said that he was just the nicest, coolest dude and absolutely loved the genre and was just a huge part of, before we had our online community, I think he was the one who was bringing people together through these movies. So his loss surprisingly really winded me, because he was just one of these dudes I kind of always expected that my path would cross with him at some point, right? We were kind of like two circles away from each other. If I'd finally made it down to one of Ricky's events, he absolutely would have been there. So
that's sad.
So
you're probably in the same age group, roughly?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
he's a legend. He started it for so many people, obviously in the UK. Like, I didn't even know who the guy was, but he literally is pretty much single-handedly responsible for my love of Kung Fu cinema. Honestly, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So rest in
That's
peace,
interesting, because on the U.S. side, that's sad. Rest in peace. On the U.S. side, it was World Norval for us. That was what we got the most of. So it's interesting to hear that, like, sometimes it'd be neat to, like, So you're saying this guy basically ran the not label, but the releases pretty much. He packaged them and everything.
Yeah, the label made
Interesting.
in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I don't still have any of the VHSs, but I've still got the very first catalog, and like that first 10 titles was just incredible. It's like John Woo's The Killer, the first Better Tomorrow movie, Snake and Eagle Shadow, Drunken Master, Five Venoms, Mad Monkey Kung Fu, Dirty Ho.
Did it have the US titles, or did it use the Chinese titles? I was often wondered that for England.
For here, I think we always had the Hong Kong titles. So I think we got.
It wouldn't be Five Deadly Venoms. It would just be the Five Venoms.
I think actually for that one, I think it was maybe the Five Deadly Venoms, but certainly we never got 36 Chamber was always 36 Chamber over here. We never got Master Killer. I think 8 Diagram Pole Fighter was never Invincible Pole Fighter over here. It was always 8 Diagram Pole Fighter.
I think things got a little sketchy when Wu-Tang got popular and they started changing a number of titles to be more Wu-Tang centric.
You meaning Wu-Tang Collection, not the Wu-Tang Clan.
Sorry, but it was kind of influenced by Wu-Tang Clan.
100%. Right? Totally,
so I think I remember specifically that Raiders of the Buddhist Temple, the Sonny Yu film, came out here as Raiders of Wu-Tang. I remember they specifically used that. So definitely they started taking a lot of Wu-Tang stuff and making it very, I mean, they did that with a whole bunch of them. I believe
they're still doing it now. Now they're just doing it on YouTube.
I think the funniest one, I can never remember the name. Is it Gold Bandits and Prostitutes? That film became Thugs, Hoes, and Skrilla. Fantastic, just title change there. Thugs, Hoes, and Skrilla. Yeah, great stuff.
Cashing in.
Yeah. Well,
all right, Fu, you want to send us off?
Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching, whichever your preferred medium is. Of course, we'll keep these coming. Thank you so much for enjoying what we do. We're really happy to keep doing these. Nothing more than I love sitting down with these two guys and just chatting Kung Fu. It's an absolute pleasure. So we'll keep the episodes coming. And, of course, if you want to follow us, like us, subscribe, comment down below. Of course, if you're an audio listener, what would really, really, really be great is if you give us a 5-star review on your audio platform of choice. That feeds us into the algorithm, gets us more eyes on us, and we would very, very much appreciate that. Follow us on our own individual YouTube channels. We have Martial Arts Theatre 3000, Food for Thought, and The Fanatical Dragon. And thank you so much, guys. Join us next time when we'll come back with we won't mention what film we're doing. We're going to
but we'll be before Christmas, and it'll be a real Christmas present.
Oh, there we go. That's so exciting. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Later.